Matomo BigQuery and data warehouse exports. This is a non-prepared conference. In fact, I finished it up yesterday night by chance, I have to say. Doesn't mean that it's not going to be interesting. It's just like I'm going to make some demo and maybe it will work, maybe it won't. I don't know, but I'm going to do my best. So the purpose of the conference is the following one: to introduce the Matomo Cloud BigQuery and data warehouse export. As far as I remember, it's a paid feature in the cloud. So if you are using Matomo Cloud, if you are using Matomo Cloud, you can access it when you click on the gear icon, export, and over here you get BigQuery and data warehouse. And normally you can click on it and then just click on a button in order to enable it. In my case, my colleague enabled it for me, so I don't really know if what a traditional user is saying, but that's what I'm going to talk about in this conference. I'm sorry if I drink a lot during this conference, but I have still 2 other conferences to give after this one. I already gave one, so I'm already starting to lose my voice. So my name is Ronan. I'm Customer Success Manager at Matomo, and I'm as well a Customer Experience Manager at Matomo. So to say, my role is to really have an overall understanding of Matomo, so that when I get in contact with the client, mostly on the phone, be able to understand their pain and find the right profile on Earth who can help them. Also the co-creator of Matomo Camp, and I had the chance to write several books about Matomo that you can find on Amazon. The most interesting one for you is the one that I call the big books about Matomo, which is the translation of the Matomo book that I wrote in French with Édition ENI, which is one of, let's say, the major IT book provider in France. The plan for today is to explain the issue that we are trying to solve with this feature. Then we will see, we'll try to understand the concept of database in Matomo, and then I'm going to make some demo in SQL language. So I already introduced this slide in another conference before, but this is overall the behavior of Matomo. So you insert on your website, let's say, a tracking code. When this tracking code is getting executed, it's going to fill up a database. Then the database, in addition to it, there's a bunch of files written in PHP, which are in fact processing the data from the database in order to pull out, when you look at the user interface, some clean data, okay? And this conference will be talking about part number 2, because when you have a look at the data over here, they are perfect, but there are some drawbacks. When you look over here, you get access to everything, but those data may not be 100% clean. So we're going to see over here how the advantages of using this method, thanks to this feature. So this is the database of Matomo. So the database of Matomo, this is something that you never see as a cloud user of Matomo. If you are using the on-premise version of Matomo and that you install it on your own, this is typically what you can see, or you will see it as well in a console mode. So I'm not going to present the console mode, but if you installed Matomo, over here, if you install Matomo on your own server, you're going to see your database, which will look like this. Okay, so this is what we call the Matomo database. Within the Matomo database, you have what we call a table. So this is a MySQL table, and each table contains a part of the data that you are seeing, let's say somehow through the user interface of Matomo. So, for example, if I have a look at, I don't know if I have some alerts. Okay, if I look at the table, which is called alerts, and that I look at my Matomo, which in my case will be here. So I'm supposed to have at least one alert, which is configured. And if I look over here in personal alerts, shows C1, you see? So everything that you have within the user interface is in fact the fruit of things which are hosted within the database. And this is, of course, something that you never see when you are a cloud user, because giving you an access to this database is kind of super dangerous. So you need to provide it within a secure environment. Okay, that's the thing. So this is the Matomo database. So this is where all the magic is getting stored. If you install it on premise, you can access it to it thanks to your web hosting provider. In my case, I'm using OVH, and OVH has a special software which is called PHP-MyAdmin, and PHP-MyAdmin is currently the software that we have here, which makes, let's say, the use, or at least the view of the database more visual. And over here, you get what we call the archive reports. So what are the differences between using the database? Okay, why should we choose the database rather than using the API? In fact, I probably didn't show it before. Oh, sorry. Okay. I forgot to explain the issue that we are trying to solve here. But in fact, I'm talking about the use of the database because when you start to have a lot of traffic on your website, you will get, it depends on the name, okay, but I'm going to call it sampling. It's not really sampling, but let's call it sampling. So when you start to have a lot of traffic, you are going to get some of your information, which are going to be grouped under a category named others, okay? It's not really sampling because the data is still here and you will still be able to access to them. But let's say for an end user who would like to get an access to all the data, that's sampling because they cannot access to it all. So if we look at demo.matomo.cloud, for example, you will see that if you expand, for example, this given report, make it flat, you see this given line, okay, named others. It means that there is a lot of URL which belongs to jobs view, okay, but they haven't been displayed over here because by default, Matomo has a file which is called the config file, which is going to restrict the number of page URL. I mean, it's not even page URL because in fact, that's as well concerning any other dimension that you have in Matomo. So the one which are the most concerned is going to be the events, the pages. If you are on an e-commerce website, that's going to be the product name if you have more than 500 references. And as you can imagine, this is not acceptable for an e-commerce website to have the product name which are grouped under others, because you want to know which products are not working. So as, for example, a university website, you cannot tell to your researcher that, oh, I don't know the number of times that your specific article, which is not within the top 500, has been viewed. I can just tell you that this is not part of the 500, but probably your researchers, he or she doesn't care at all because they just want to get the final answer. So if you are using, let's say, the user interface of Matomo, you're not going to make it. Okay, you're not going to succeed to get this information unless you are using what we call the raw data, so to say, which is part of the visit log, which will require some extra work. And even though you are using the raw data over here, using the raw data here is not really suitable for high traffic websites, because this given report can only allow you to export rows 10,000 by 10,000. So it's going to be extra sport. And as well, it has another limitation. It's like if you are interested in visits which have more than 10,000 actions, there's as well a limit in Matomo that you need to overcome in order to be able to make those exports. So to say, using the API for high traffic websites will have some limitation that you can bypass with the use of the database. So that's the reason why I'm talking about the database today. That's really for high traffic websites. So the advantage of using the database rather than the API is that really you can get an access to all data without much restriction. In terms of ease of use, good luck, because compared to the API where the data is already, let's say, clean, it's already processed. Typically, you can have a look over here at the raw data. Okay, this is clean. The name are properly written. The report is already made, and so on and so forth. That's not the case at all when it comes to the database. As you can see in the database, for example, if I want to get, let's say, the page URL. The page URL are stored under what we call the log action. Okay, Matomo log action. If I look at it, this is what it looks like. So you may think that this is the report that you wanted, but in fact, you can see that there's an additional information over here, which is the type, and the type corresponds of the type of action. So in fact, some are page URL, some other are outlinks, some other are event URL, some other are something else. And in fact, you are comparing different things here. The processing of the data is way quicker with the database rather than the API. The data completeness is different. It's debatable. So in fact, in the database, you don't get at 100% the same data as you have within the API. I'm going to take an example. If you have a look at the Matomo log visit, okay. So this is the most popular table within the database. If you look over here, you will see that when it comes to the, let's say, the device brand, for example, you see that instead of having the full name, you get acronym. Okay, that's exactly the same thing for the operating system. You get an acronym. Okay, so compared to the user interface of Matomo, where for a given device, you will get the brand properly written or the operating system. Okay, you don't get it with the database, so that may lead to confusion for your end users. For the scalability, this is scalable compared to the API. So to make it simple on each time, it may not able to solve all your issues. It's just a matter of what your end client, let's say, is asking. And from their demand, you will see if it's better to use the database or to use the API. Let's see use case about how to use the database. So first thing first is like you need to build up the query. As I mentioned previously, you cannot get the information that you want straight away. You need to build a query. So in order to build a query, you need to have knowledge about how to create a SQL query. So if you don't have any knowledge at all, you need to get started and you need to start to train yourself, because playing with a database can be dangerous. Of course, normally you don't get an access to a database without knowing what you are doing. So most of the time, the one providing you the database will provide you with a secure environment with a copy of it. If you really have no clue about what you are doing, there is a webpage on matomo.org where you have explanation of the main SQL requests which are made in order to make some report. In my case, what I'm gonna do right now is like I'm gonna use phpMyAdmin in order to illustrate. So what I would like to do, for example, is I have the visit log report. Okay, let's imagine that I would like to get the number of operating system visiting my website in the month of November. So what I can do is like I need to pick up a query which contains the log visit. So typically this one is doing it. Like the list of all site search, maybe not the most talkative. Select all visit and action. Okay, I'll do something like this. So next, as I don't know MySQL, I'm going to use ChatGPT. And I'm going to use the example that I just saw in order to adapt my query. So based on this query, write me a SQL query giving me the number of visitors which were coming from the different operating system on my website ID equal 1 for October 2024. Let's do something like this. I'm not 100% sure that it's gonna work, but let's try it out. Okay. What I think is challenging over here is like I say visitors, so I don't know if that's gonna work, but let's give it a try. So here I have my query. It looks fine. Keep in mind that ChatGPT may not know well the Matomo database, so I repeat, in order to help it, you need to go on this page and have at least one request which is correct so that it can already try it out. So next, when I'm in phpMyAdmin, I can in fact try it out. Once more, don't perform such things if you don't know what you are doing, because here you are playing with your database. Currently, it's about displaying some data, so you may not make any harm. But if you are using a request, or if you have some authorization as a user, which is the right access, if you just mess up your query, you destroy your database and you don't have any data left. So at least you cannot use your database anymore. So here, let's see if that's going to work. So here, as you can see, I perform my request, month of October for website ID number 1. Normally, as visitor, I should get 75 for Windows, 26 for iOS, Linux 25. I have no idea if that's correct. So let's double check it. So my website is this one, October. I don't think that's going to be correct. Website, and let's see, we said it was the software. 132, 75, 26. Okay, those are visits. We want visitors. Can I get the visitors? I cannot get the visitors because, so I'm gonna have to change it. I want the visit instead. The problem is there's no visitor metric at a monthly level unless you change the config file in Matomo. Okay, so I want the visit instead. So show the query box. Okay, and go. And now we should get 132. So 132, 58, 39, 39. 49, 49, I say 47 here. Okay, so for some reason it's not getting, as you can see, the number of visits from Linux. But for the rest, as you can see, it looks good. So my guess is like it's making a mistake with Ubuntu here, which should have been over here. Ubuntu being a distribution of Linux, and that should be 58. Exactly. So as you can see, the request strangely is working fine with the use of ChatGPT or report that I never made so far. So that's the process that you follow. In fact, you create the SQL query, you execute your query within the user interface. So over here, for example, what I did here was getting the page view report, which is probably the topmost report, which is the most asked when it comes to database. And then you check your results. That's the big thing. Then after you need to go within Matomo and double check if the figures match. If they are matching for the main, high chances that your request is performed correctly. And then after you save carefully your request, because as I showed this morning, documentation is key. So typically, if you ask your database that I showed this morning, which was about an artificial intelligence specialized for MySQL, the more requests you get correctly, the more documentation it is, and then the more your AI agent is going to be better. And of course, at the end, we want a platform where we just ask questions and the reports get made automatically so that you don't have to tear your hair up. Okay, so great. Now it works. So with this, what I said before, with on-premise installation, you need to secure your database because you don't query it like this. The issue that you will face if you are querying one single database is like, of course, if you make a complex request and that your database crash, you will crash as well your full Matomo. So in order to avoid this, where it is a bit technical, you need, in fact, to copy your database and make a copy of your database. I'm not even sure that's the right documentation, but in fact, what you need to do is like having two database, one which will be the master one, the one you don't play with. That's only for the data collection. And another one, which is here, which is a copy of the first one that you can play with, which is independent from the first one, so that you can perform all your requests against. Okay. What I was showing you here was for Matomo on-premise, but what about people who are using the cloud? So recently, the Matomo team released a feature which is called, so we call it the Matomo BigQuery database export feature, but it's not about BigQuery. At least it's about BigQuery, but you can use it for any other platform, not only BigQuery. So what is the concept of this feature? So when you get it enabled, so I repeat, this is only for people who are using the cloud of Matomo. They can go in the admin if they are super user, export BigQuery and data warehouse, and then enable the feature. Once the feature gets enabled, so it's a paid feature, they get charged for it. They can select the different websites for which they would like to make, let's say, a copy of the database. When they select those, let's say, a website that they have that they would like to copy, then there is some table of the database that's going to be filled in. So in fact, what the Matomo team succeeded to do is like creating this concept of copying the data to another database, which is secured, that you can use in order to export the data and then play with those data afterwards. And that's typically what they are explaining over here, is like a part of the database, which is over here, part of the table of the database, have been copied, and you can now access to them by exporting them to whatever data warehouse that you want. So if you are using Snowflake, if you are using Tableau, if you are using ClickSense, if you are using Microsoft Azure, if you are using Amazon S3, if you are using Google BigQuery, if you are using Metabase or whatever you want, you can in fact export those data, and we do have some guides on matomo.org explaining how to do this in order to get those data accessible for you. In this conference, I'm just going to show it about Google BigQuery because that's the most visual one. So you get your tables here. Here, the export job is a feature if you would like to add some data in the past. So you can go in the past in order to indicate, in fact, how much data you would like to export. And once it's finished, you will be able, in fact, to export those data within, so in my case, Google BigQuery. So I'm not going to explain the process in detail because it's well documented over here. So in terms of time, it's as time consuming as configuring the search engine keyword export, for example, if you already played with it. So count just maybe half a day. And of course, the more time you perform this action, then of course, the less time it's going to take you. So let's say here the magic is mostly happening into Google BigQuery. So the concept is the following one, is that you create a project. Once you create a project, you can create, let's say, what we call a database. And once you create a database, you will have to create only once, in fact, a table for each of the table that you have within the Matomo Cloud Export. So let's imagine, for example, that you would like to export all the tables that we are seeing some minutes ago. You will need to, oh, sorry, I don't remember where I was. Well, there's around a dozen of tables that you can export, so that you can create. But the most famous one are, in fact, the log visits and the log actions, which are the one which are containing let's say, the interaction of the end users. Once you create them, you perform what we call the data transfer. So the data transfer is the possibility to export the data and import them within BigQuery. And once you have done the magic, what's going to happen is like you get your tables which are filled with data. So this is the structure, and it looks like this. So this is exactly the same thing that you have with the database that I was showing you before. So you get exactly the same dimension. It's just that they are, let's say, ordered differently because BigQuery is, let's say, managing the table a bit in an order which is different. But as you can see, those are, let's say, the same data that you have as in a traditional on-premise installation. And then what you can do with BigQuery is, of course, you can query directly and make your SQL query over here. So to put it in action, it looks like this. So you get your backend. and then you perform your query within BigQuery. So typically, same exercise as with ChatGPT that I was showing you before. You copy and paste the SQL query, and you ask to ChatGPT to correct it so that the query gets simple. And then, as you can see, you get the same result. So in my case, when I performed it, that was for the month of October, I think. So month of October. Okay. Month of October, that was for the outlinks. And as you can see, 3813, that's the same result that I was getting over here. There's a bit difference, but probably that's because the dates were a little bit different. I should have picked up from the 10th to the 1st of November. And that's the end of the conference. In fact, that was mostly what I wanted to show you. So nothing exceptional, but the concept of database, why we are doing it, it's because we are going to reach some limits with the user interface of Matomo. So as a result, we need the database. As the database is MySQL based, we need to know MySQL. In order to know how to perform some SQL queries using ChatGPT may be very helpful if you have some people within your company who secure your database, so let's say creating a copy of it. If you don't have this possibility, using the cloud is nice because the copy of the database will be done securely. And then with Google BigQuery or another third-party player, you can export those copy of tables in order to make those famous queries and then bypass, let's say, the limitation of Mato. I hope you enjoyed this conference. If you have any questions, I'm going to look at them within the YouTube channel and see if I can answer them.